Welcome to our Coach's Corner podcast. I'm your host, Eric, and I want to thank you for joining us as we turn up the heat by sharing our thoughts on health and fitness, along with some of our personal fitness experiences. Each episode, we'll be covering a wide variety of topics related to overall health and fitness with a no-fluff, real talk perspective.
Welcome everyone to this episode of Coach's Corner. Today we will be breaking down one of our favorite macronutrients, protein. So let's learn about it. I'm your host Dana, and I also have hosts Eric and Amy here with me today.
What's up, guys?
Today we're bringing back a special guest, performance manager at Well Humana, Matt Hands. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me again.
So before we start our rapid fire questions, we're going to take a moment to get to know Matt a little bit better and understand his level of expertise on the topic today. Matt's background consists of a bachelor's degree in biology and a master's in exercise physiology. Matt is also a certified level 1 nutrition coach through Precision Nutrition. Matt has 7+ years in the fitness industry at the collegiate level at strength and conditioning. He was the assistant sports performance coach at the University of Iowa, then moved on to Ohio University and Tennessee Tech before finally becoming the head sports performance coach at the University of New Orleans. So now we are fortunate enough to have him as our performance manager at Well Humana. So lucky to have you, Matt. Let's turn it over to Amy for the best part of the show, rapid fire questions.
All right, Matt, you ready for the fun questions?
Yes.
Yes?
Sort of.
No hesitations? First thing that pops into your head?
No ums.
No ums.
Okay.
No ums, no buts. You ready? All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What's your middle name?
I am.
Morning or night person?
Morning.
The last concert you went to?
Church.
Same.
Biggest fear? I told you, but more than you're deep. I told you. A fear. First fear that pops into your head.
I want to say heights, but it's not really heights. It's hit or miss.
We'll go. Favorite actor?
Man, another one.
You got me twice.
Salty or sweet?
Salty.
Favorite snack?
You get me again. I think I went beef turkey last time. I don't want to say the same thing twice. I just said
If you could go anywhere in the world, all expenses paid vacation today, where would you go?
Spain.
Okay. Do you take naps?
Very rarely.
Interesting. What is your favorite source of protein?
Beef.
Beef. The beef.
Beef.
We got a beef guy
All
here.
the red meat. That's why he's on the show today. Little tidbit, Matt will show up to work with a container full of just simply meat to eat. Like they might be burgers, might be steak, could be, who knows?
Captain Smoked Meats. Can confirm. He also shows up with a tub of just raw eggs and puts in the microwave and just roasts everyone out of the break room because it smells like
Put me on blast.
eggs.
I would not advise.
Call it out.
Yeah.
It makes me so mad.
I would not advise this in a work setting, but we'll let him stand. So today we're talking about protein, and it's something that everyone's usually always interested in and has a lot of questions surrounding it. So really what I want to start off by talking about is what is protein and how is it used within the body?
Yeah, try not to get too sciencey. Protein is simply, it's an organic molecule that is broken up by amino acids. So what does that mean? Think of it as the building blocks of everything that's going on in your body, because protein isn't simply something, let me reverse back. When you think of protein, everything's skeletal muscle, right? Mm-hmm. So it does so much more than that in the body. There's so many processes that it does, all the way from enzymes, hormones, your immunity, neurotransmitters. What are those? Those are like if you drink a cup of coffee, what helps get you going. That has something to do with neurotransmitters. There are all sorts of different things in the body that go on. So that's why, like you mentioned, why it is important, because it does have so many different applications. I'm telling you. I mean, yes, it does. It's growth and repair is one of those, but not the only thing.
And we'll talk about that a little bit later about when combining macronutrients together, like pairing a protein with a carb, protein with a carb and a fat with a protein instead of like a fat and a carb together, because the little neurotransmitters are getting that to throughout your blood and things like that. So we'll touch on that, but that's a little bit further down. So what I really want to know is we talked about what is it, why we need it, but it's always talked about as being like the number one macronutrient. More protein, more protein, more protein. I want to go a little bit more in depth on the why. Why do individuals need protein? Like we can go step by step. Why do they need it?
Well, I think from the macronutrient perspective, when you look at the three, you have, like you said, you have protein, you have fats, you have carbs. You know, when you look at fats and carbs, a lot of their sources are energy, right? And that's kind of their main function. They're using that to provide energy to the body. Where protein, it's not the main source. It's all the underlying mechanisms that are happening on a, every minute, every second, daily, weekly, yearly basis. There's so much going on. So what we can look at it as the one most people are kind of aware of is growth and repair. So when you break down skeletal muscle from working out, exercise, whatever it may be that you're doing that, breaks down muscle tissue. So anytime you're working, anytime you're doing something that causes the muscles to be used, so that could be as simple as getting up in the morning, taking a walk. All right, you could have muscle damage from that. So, the protein that you take in throughout the day is going to help with the repair and growth or regrowth of that muscle tissue that's been damaged.
And I find like most people really struggle with hitting their protein, and they really don't realize how little protein they have within, I'm going to say diet, but what I mean by diet is just what they're intaking daily as far as food. If they actually like tracked for just a week or a day, they would see how little protein they actually have in their diet. So, but a lot of people don't know how much you have. We always say like, oh, eat more protein, more protein. It's like, well, I don't know how much to eat. So like what is the recommended amount of protein someone should have per day?
Well, it's funny you ask. So the RDA, so recommended daily allowance, or how much is recommended by the governing body, is only 0.8 grams per kilogram, which is fairly low.
Yeah.
Hold on, let's back up there. Only 8 grams per kilogram.
0.8
per kilogram of body weight.
Your body weight,
Okay.
you divide it by 2.2. That's what you get.
Okay, that's the conversion of kilograms. Okay.
Yeah, and then if you just times that by 0.8, you'd get a very small number. Like an average, just off the top of my head, maybe it's 175 pounds. That could equate to maybe 45, 50 grams a day. So like when you
I ate that in one meal.
Right, exactly. So then you have to think of like, well, where did that come from? Where did the RDA come from? Well, that number came from when we were back in wartime, and they needed to, when we were allocating things in survival, what is the lowest amount that you can take in per day to survive?
So do these fitness apps that track macros and proteins, is that what they go off of?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think most of the time if you put it in there, a lot of times you'll get the little spinny thing and you'll have like 30%. It rolls more about percentages and things like that. But, that's the low end, obviously, if you're just trying to survive. But really, you're looking for more like 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram, which that if you want to look at it in pounds, it's about 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight.
So if you weigh 100 pounds, you want 100 grams of protein?
Correct.
Yeah.
Or 80 to 100. And there's a range there, and you got to find kind of what works for you. Maybe you start at 80, you see what that does, and then you kind of build up from there.
Just looking at my little fitness app that I use that tracks macros, and it has me at 85 a day is my goal.
85 grams.
Grams of protein.
Yeah, it's low.
Super
That's
low.
low.
You're at 85 pounds, right?
Yeah. Super low. So like something that I've always gone off of that's been like pretty easy, but you have to think of how active you are. That's something that you need to be considerate of. I'm usually around 1 gram per pound.
Mm-hmm.
So if I weigh 135 pounds, I'm usually taking in 135 grams per day. So that probably put it in perspective for you, Eric.
Very
It's
much
like,
so.
I'm very low.
'Cause I still struggle to hit that number too. So
And I'm even actually higher than that. I do like 1.2 grams per pound. So I'm usually like 160 grams. I'm working out, 4 to 5 days a week, and I'm fairly active. But initially that's going to be hard to hit for someone.
Yeah.
That's going to be very hard. But now, like, I'll go over protein super easy.
Well, we've hit on in past episodes to where you're in this certain culture, whether you work a lot or travel a lot, like how do you get the right amount of that? And I know we're going to touch on that later, but it's just, to me, that's crazy how you have that much protein and trying to hit it.
And that is very hard because you have to find protein-rich foods.
Yep.
And that's often really difficult to find in like processed foods.
Yeah.
Like really difficult.
Yeah.
And I think, if you have a heavily processed diet, you're not coming close.
Right.
No, whenever I like track, sometimes I'm just curious. I'm like, I'm gonna track and see what I eat today. My body exists off of carbs.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even touch. Like, I have to be very conscious to get protein.
Yeah,
And I feel
same.
like I eat like not terribly,
Cheapest macronutrient.
but
I think you have to go like you do have to start tracking a while to start to get a gauge on what your daily meals and how much protein needs to be in each meal, which, I mean, it's not going to take 3 years. If you do this for 6 months, you're going to start to get a better understanding of how you get your protein in. And we're going to talk about some foods that allow that. But first I want to touch on, Eric mentioned his fitness app that he uses to track his macros. And, Matt, you've been in the industry for a long time. This has been your love, your passion, but you're also educated and certified in this. What percentage of your daily food intake should roughly be made up of protein? It doesn't have to be exact, but what are some good balances?
I think the simple answer is about 30%. I think everyone could probably do pretty well and maintain that pretty well. But it also comes down to, what is, number one, what is your daily amount that you want to hit? What's that range first? So taking that into account, if you are at that 2.2 grams, per kilogram, what does that look like? Is that 200 grams of protein a day? And then go from there and say, well, what is that percentage of my daily macro? So say you put that in, Eric, in your MyFitnessPal, and you just spin the little scale to 200 grams.
Yeah.
What percentage is it coming at? 30, 35? Is that 40%? So that, I think starting there and then prioritize that protein amount for your percentage and then work backwards from there with your carbs and fats.
That's such a great recommendation. Is like, if you have any app, usually it's on a scale, and like you can play with it, right? And a lot of times I've seen on these apps before, it's going to be really carb heavy if you just go off their recommendation.
That's how mine is. Exactly. It's
so
highest
like
in carbs.
60% probably. If you scale that, just like Matt said, and move that protein number up or move it to 30%, see how many grams that is, and then see what other macros are affected. See how those are adjusted.
Yeah, mine's at 50% carb, 30 fat, 20 protein.
Yeah. Mine would be like the opposite. That's pretty standard.
Okay.
Yeah. However, on our expert opinion, we feel it's too low in protein.
Yeah. Okay.
I like
it's good to know.
You can always start with a very middle ground, like a 30, 35, 35.
Okay.
Where it's like protein, fats, carbs.
Yeah.
So protein 30%, fats 35%, carbs 35%, and then scale your fats and carbs, whatever you like to do. Like, say maybe you feel like you enjoy a little bit less carbs and you enjoy more fatty foods, fatty dense foods, go with that. If I like a little bit more carbs, I feel like I respond better to carbs. Then you can bump your carbs up from there too.
Just to give a side note to everybody listening, this episode's obviously about protein, but the next two, we're going to hit more on these macros, so carbs and fats after this. So because you hear us talking about it today, stay tuned to the next episodes as well, because we're going to go deeper with the carbs and the fats.
Oh, you're going to learn about it. You're going to learn all about it. So I think that's another great example is like you can play around with that. Like for me, like Matt said, I don't typically eat a lot of fats in my diet. I eat fats for hormonal purposes because they play a huge part, which you'll learn in the next couple episodes. But I like to keep my carbs not high, but more moderate. So I do like a 40% carbs, 35% protein, 25% fat. I wouldn't recommend going lower than that for fats because then you're going to start to see some side effects. But I seem to do pretty well with it. So it's also like once you set that, how do you feel? Like how do you feel? How are you responding to it? One thing is Eric, so if you go home today and you're like, okay, 85 grams isn't cutting it, I'm going to go up to 180 grams. One that's going to be hard. One that's going to be hard to hit initially, but say you get adjusted and you're getting closer to that mark in the next 2 weeks. I promise you're going to feel so bloated initially because your body is not used to that much protein. So it doesn't know, like, this is really not going to be scientific, but it really doesn't know what to do with it. Yeah. So you're going to be essentially bloated in the midsection, and honestly, you might be gassy. Like for our listeners, like that will probably happen.
Go back for my wife.
Yeah. Like it will adjust. The body is amazing. Like it is so adaptable.
So there's like a transition period there for your body.
It will adjust within like, what would you say, like 2 weeks?
I always think rule of thumb 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay.
It will adjust.
It also takes longer to get through proteins take longer to get through digestive tract too. So that's kind of why that's another reason why you may feel a little more bloated.
Gotcha.
But also more full. Yeah. That's kind of where that satiation comes into because it takes so long.
Makes sense.
To get through your system.
So the biggest question I believe is probably on all of our listeners' minds as we talk about protein is like, what types of food are proteins? Like, we talk about how it may be hard to hit, about increasing it, and about the selection is often smaller because it's usually in nutrient-dense food. It's not very heavy in processed foods. So can you break down for us even more in depth, like just specifics, what types of food are proteins?
A lot to unpack there, not to play on words with the processed food, but the most animal products, so any type of animal that you eat, they're all going to have some level of protein. Obviously, some have more than others, but you also have other things like eggs. They're very protein rich. But then you have more vegetarian options like tempeh and tofu, things like that. So there's a bunch of different ways to get it. But most of the time you're going to look at those foods, it's going to be naturally occurring unprocessed options, coming mostly from animal products, but that doesn't mean that doesn't come from vegetarian options. You may just have to eat a little bit more. I mean, there's protein in broccoli. There's protein in numbers of foods. It just depends on the amount. And then what is your desired intake, what you like to eat, and then, how many times or how much of that item do you want to eat too, I think plays an important role.
Side question. Are you an 80-20 ground beef guy since you're a beef man, or are you a 97-3?
No, 97.3.
That's you.
That's me over here.
My turkey, I get 99.
Yeah.
I like 85-15 for the most part. But I also use that as like fat for like, I guess if you're looking at total macros for the day.
Right.
Like I don't eat a ton of other fatty rich foods. Like I don't eat a lot of nuts. I don't eat a lot of stuff like that. So I get a lot of that fat that I need from the beef choices or meat choices that I use.
And I know Amy has times of being a vegetarian, things like that. can you tell us a little bit about, like, maybe your protein intake wasn't super high, but what are some sources that you took in to, like, get that amount of protein being a vegetarian?
Yeah, I mean, Matt touched on some of them. I actually love tofu. You gotta love tofu. That's my favorite. Beans, a lot of beans, lentils, quinoa actually has a very high in protein. Also higher in carbs because of grain, but if you're gonna do grain, it is high in protein.
Edamame.
Yeah,
That's soybeans. Yep. Chia seeds, nuts, peanut butter, soy milk. I do like the protein cashew nut milk. That's good.
You guys should ask Amy about her soy lattes.
I get a soy latte every morning. I love it. Peas, like pea protein, that stuff, and then like vegan protein bars, vegan protein powders.
I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan, but often, like I said, my protein intake is high. So sometimes, not all the time, I will resort to a protein shake to be able to hit that macronutrient if I'm in a time crunch or something. And I've actually switched to a vegan, pure plant-based protein. That wasn't because I'm a meat eater. I eat a lot of meat actually, but the whey protein messed with my stomach. So I would feel bloated afterwards. I would not feel good on it. And I just still did it for years. And then finally I'm like, I don't want to feel this way. So I switched to all plant-based protein, and I really like it. I have no issues with it at all. My digestive system seems to like it better. So that's something that's been really nice. And that's something that I think a lot of vegetarians and vegans may have to do if they want to hit that number or get that amount of protein, because it is so much harder without eating a lot. Don't eat dairy. So you're talking eggs are out. Eggs are a huge source of protein. Let's talk cottage cheese, a huge source of protein. Yogurts, Greek yogurts can be it, but if you're not eating those, it can be very difficult. So a supplement like a protein shake may be beneficial for you there.
Yeah. I will say I wasn't vegan for very long because I have a deep love for cheese. But I love seafood. That's a big one for me. So then I kind of switched to like pescatarian, and I ate a ton of like salmon, and fish is high in protein too.
Super high.
So I like that. That made it a little bit easier, and I love seafood.
So like all meats are protein, seafoods are protein, eggs are protein. Like I said, Greek yogurt's high in protein, cottage cheese, beef jerky. Like those are all like just your whole natural sources of protein. But that can be very difficult for someone if they're not even if they're vegetarian or vegan, but if they just aren't a meat eater.
Or if you're on the go constantly, like how are you going to take something to heat up to eat? You can't do that.
No. So we have a game of true or false that we're going to play. It's true or false and explain. So not rapid fire, but these are things that we have heard about protein, and we want to know, is it true or false, and explain. So first question is, your body can only absorb 20 to 30 grams of protein at one sitting. True or false, and explain.
False. All day.
Really?
False. Yes.
And explain.
Okay. So your body can actually digest per feeding. The upper level is 0.55 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Let's do the math here. For all these non-math people in the room.
Right. So do like 200 pounds. Just because or you can do 100 pounds. Either way.
So what was it again now?
0.55 grams per kilogram of body weight.
Of the 100 pounds, so 55.
So 55. So you could, if you only weighed 100 pounds, you could eat.
That's really small.
55 grams.
In one sitting?
In one sitting. Wow.
And your body can use that.
Yes. Oh, that sounds a little odd. 55 out of
0.55.
So
right, times 100
pounds.
pounds.
That sounds a little high. You have to divide by 2.2.
Mess up math.
No, it's okay.
We're not math people in this room.
Yeah, as soon as I was like, that sounds a lot.
Let's see what it is.
So if you're 100 pounds, you have to divide by 2.2, right? So that gives you 45, All right, then you times by 25.5. So it's 25.
25 grams
5 grams.
25 grams per sitting.
per sitting. And that's only if you were 100
If
pounds.
you're 100 pounds.
So if
You're
you're,
not 100 pounds, are you?
yeah.
So just for the sake of just being a little bit more realistic, say you're 200 pounds. We just double that, right?
Yeah.
So that's 50 grams per sitting. So that would be more around like what I would eat is about 50 grams per sitting.
But even if you take in like 65 grams
Yep.
in one sitting, that's not necessarily a bad thing, is it?
No, I don't think it's terrible.
So what does your body do with that excess?
It can convert it to sugars. It doesn't like to.
Especially with protein.
Yeah,
It's like
especially
to.
Okay.
but you also have a thermic effect of food too.
So you're burning it.
Gotcha.
It's like your body's ability to absorb, transport, store, do all those stuff with that. And protein's like 30% of that. So the energy needs to even do all that takes 30% of it. So that's kind of that's a caveat of why you can eat that much. It also, there is some activity factors into that too. If you do have more muscle mass on your body, compare if you have two people who are 200 pounds, but one has a body fat percentage that is lower, meaning they have more lean mass, they're obviously going to probably stand to take in that higher level a little bit more than somebody else.
Does that differentiate somebody who's trying to put on weight or muscle mass versus somebody who's trying to lose weight?
Yes and no, I think, because you think, okay, I want to gain weight.
Yeah.
I need to eat all the protein. Well, yeah, you want to because you're trying to gain lean muscle mass, but some of that's more of just a calories in, calories out game. Well, really for both.
Okay.
But when you're losing weight, it becomes a little bit more important to take in higher amounts of protein because you're trying to lose mass at that point.
But you want to maintain muscle.
But you want to maintain your muscle. You don't want to lose that.
Gotcha.
So, like for instance, for your MyFitnessPal, you have 85 grams of protein and you're trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
You have to think of, well, just a calories in, calories out game. Where am I going to lose that mass? Am I going to lose fat mass or am I going to lose muscle mass? Probably both, because I'm not actually giving my body enough grams of protein to actually maintain it.
Yeah. Wish we had one of those sounds with like the bomb dropping.
Eric's skin is mind blown. Right? Like he's about to change everything.
Coming back to that 2030, like that stems from, I don't want to say old research, but just old research in what stimulates muscle protein synthesis. So that's where like, you can only have 20, 30 grams because that's kind of the trigger. That's like, hey, if you get 20 to 30, then muscle protein synthesis is going to start rolling. And muscle protein synthesis, what that is just your body's process of building muscle tissue.
So could I just
building proteins?
Go drink like a 3-scoop protein shake and get that in one sitting and be good?
I wouldn't.
You're going to feel really bloated if you do that.
When you think of like your feedings per day, like there's definitely I don't think there's any benefit to the 6+ meals over 3 or 4, but I would argue there's probably more benefit, at least from a protein synthesis or what the amino acid pool. So when your body takes in protein, it breaks it down. It has to break it down into a usable source, right? So when it does, that's what's continuously circulating through your blood. You're not going to get much more gain from 6 meals of that to 3 to 4, but when you go 1 to 2, then there's like a little bit of a difference. So like the happy medium is 3 to 4 meals.
I have so many more questions around that, but we'll keep moving on with these.
So to true or false, to maximize performance, you should consume protein within 30 minutes post workout.
The anabolic window.
Yeah, you knew I was coming with that. True or false, and explain.
The golden gate to hypertrophy. No, I don't think it's as important as people think. I would say that what you take in over 24 hours is more important. If you go to the gym and you take in 30, you got your 30 gram protein scoop right after you work out, and then you don't eat anything the rest of the day, versus someone who's just, hey, I eat 3 meals a day, I get about 45 grams of protein, they're going to have probably more results than the person just drinking the protein shake right afterwards. Well,
and it's like, I hear so many people that it's like bro science basically that, they may work out. So let's put this into context. Like they work out at 5 p.m. and they've had breakfast, lunch, and then like a pre-workout snack.
Mm-hmm.
Then they work out at 5 p.m. So their last meal was at 4 o'clock, an hour before they worked out. They worked out from 5 to 6. And they're like, well, I got to have a protein shake or I'm going to lose my gains like immediately on the car ride home. But then they start fixing dinner. So it's like, you're about to get that you're about to eat dinner within an hour after you train. Like that can be your protein consumption. That can be the meal that you use. Now, if you're a person that needs those extra calories because you're not going to hit your daily calorie goal, then maybe you add it there. But if it's just for the sake of like, I need a protein shake because I just worked out, like, no, you're about to eat dinner. Like that can be that. So it's within context, really.
Yeah. I think it stems from good intent.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that you need to have that protein in early. But most of the time with the people that were doing that, we're also eating enough protein throughout the day. They're just using that protein shake as a means to an end, not an ends to a mean.
Mm-hmm. 100. Okay.
Wait, I have a question. So when you're eating before a workout, should you get protein before your workout, or is that less important? You want to be a little more carb heavy before a workout? Is it more important protein after?
Well, it depends on what your stomach, your digestive system can handle. I would say protein carb before, protein carb after, not a lot of fats. Your stomach tends to help you use that a little bit or adjust to that a little bit better. But if you don't, like if you're somebody that doesn't like to, eat before they work out, maybe they feel a little bloated. So they're like, I don't really like to eat or anything before. Like, you don't have to. I'm not saying it's going to make or break you, but I mean, it also depends. One thing, context is definitely key. Like when do you work out? Do you work out at the end of the day at 5:30 or do you work at 5:30 in the morning?
Because that's going to be two totally different. I'll tell you, when I work out in the morning at 6 a.m., I train fasted because I do not like to eat that early. And then when I work out at 5 p.m., I eat like a pre-workout snack at like 4. So, I mean, it's just going to be different for how you feel and how you tolerate food too before you're eating. The big one, animal protein is superior to plant protein. True or false, and explain.
I'm trying to stay unbiased.
Unbiased. Still animal protein. When you look at the specific amino acids that make up animal protein versus what makes up your vegetarian options, animal protein tends to have more of a higher, amount of your essential amino acids. So there's 9 of them. I mean, the big one's leucine. Everybody kind of has a little bit of an idea of what leucine is. When you look at your vegetarian options, they typically are missing some of those essential amino acids. So the more complete of the 9 that you can get per source, I think the better off or the more effective it's going to be. I'm not saying you can't do it with vegetarian proteins, but it's just a little easier for animal proteins, especially when you're eating food sources.
By pairing certain plant proteins, you can still get, like beans and rice, for example, have complementary amino acids that get you that complete protein.
Exactly. Interesting. So it's like, it depends.
I think we need to bring in some vegans and vegetarians and talk
debate.
about this. But
and whip up beans and rice, or would you rather just eat a steak? I don't know.
Oh, it depends.
It depends on how you feel, and I think, you have to look at that question. I asked superior, so neither one are bad at all. Yeah. Like we're still looking to get in there. So last question. Protein will make me bulky. True or false, and explain.
No, it's not going to make you bulky.
But people take it to bulk up, right?
Yeah, sort of.
You should have some carbs to bulk up.
Calories,
yeah,
right?
more calories.
You're getting a surplus of calories.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I think when you look at what makes someone, I think we always think like protein, because it's just, once again, it's kind of that, everybody kind of comes back to like this bro science thought process, because that's all you see. You see.
That's what a lot of the research was on too, in the early days was on bodybuilding.
Yeah. I mean, that was the people that were doing it. That's people who are, I mean, when you look at the fitness industry, like what kind of, I don't know, not word I'm looking for, but not encapsulate, but really takes a lot of what the fitness industry is bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, Muscle and Fitness magazine back in the day, like a lot of those types of articles and things that came out. I mean, that was where it was all from, and that's all people saw.
And then from the marketing side, the ad inserts in those magazines are all protein.
Yeah. It's,
right?
You get this big, beefy dude with huge biceps, and he's got his protein shake. He's like, you got to make sure you get your protein. That's all you see. So, I mean, it's easy to think, oh, well, if I eat too much protein, I'm going to get bulky. But once again, I think it comes back to that first part of, like, why is protein important? There's so many different things. I mean, you can look at it at immunity. If you're not getting enough protein, like, do you feel like you're getting sick all the time? Well, your immunity is going to be affected. I mean, it uses proteins and antibodies. I mean, protein is used for your hormonal stuff. A lot of hormones, a lot of enzymes that are used for all that too. So you got to kind of look at what is kind of the overall goal, and that's to just have enough protein for your body to be able to, be as optimal as possible.
I don't think people realize how hard it is to bulk up. Like how much work really goes into building those muscles and how much food they really are consuming. Like the average person is not going to accidentally look like a bodybuilder.
Yeah. You know how much work and dedication and discipline and sacrifice goes into that? Mm-hmm. More than most anyone is willing to do, because it is all time consuming. So I think, but also on the flip end, when people have gained weight over the years, all of a sudden you look in the mirror and you're 20 pounds heavier. That has been in the making for 5 to 10 years. You're just noticing that now. And so now it hits you like a ton of bricks and you're like, oh my God, I'm 20 pounds overweight. I want to lose this, and I'm going to lose it in 6 weeks. That occurred over a 5-year span, slow and steady. 3 pounds or 4 pounds a year, like over the course of, 5 pounds a year over the course of 4 years. Like you're 20 pounds heavier at that point. So it's like you said, bulking's hard to do, but also like just gaining in general. It happens in life as we age, as our metabolism slows down, but things are happening that you're doing in your daily life that are contributing to that. And that's what we don't want to look at, right? We don't want to look at that. Yeah. So to kind of wrap everything up, like I'm going to go into some more specific questions around protein. Where do protein supplements play a role in someone's life? I mentioned it earlier, but where do you feel like they're really essential, and are they even needed?
Short answer, they're definitely not needed, but they are helpful. I don't want to demonize, because,
probably in my case when I'm not getting enough.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like like you mentioned, Eric, is that busy person too. How it's easy, it's convenient. I mean, do you want to use it as a crutch? No, you want to obviously try to get real foods. But that being said, if you notice that your protein is low and you could benefit from it, like absolutely get a whey protein powder, or like a casein protein powder, or a combo of both, and use that to your advantage. I would say you definitely, you would benefit. Everyone's going to benefit from it. But when you look at like a cost perspective, is it necessary? No, it can get expensive.
Well, I think what's so frustrating is like you walk into a gas station, like say you're on a road trip or something. You walk into a gas station, you haven't eaten in like 5 hours, you're starving. You're like, I'm going to make a good choice, even though you want those Cheetos, because I love some Cheetos. Like, so you walk into the gas station and you're like, I'm going to get a protein bar, and they got some good ones. They do. But then it's like $3.99 and the bag of chips is 99 cents. And it's like, man. So, I mean, it can get expensive when you're constantly relying on supplements, but for the busy individual, they certainly can help.
But I'm saying they are called supplements to supplement your. There you go. They're not dependents.
Dependents.
And you mentioned, Matt, you led me right into this. There's a lot of talk between like casein protein and an isolate protein supplement. Can you explain like your short answer of the difference between those two?
It's how quickly that it's digested in the stomach.
So isolate is instant.
Yeah. So the more processed that whey protein goes down, so like you have like a whey protein, right? And then you have like then you'll see something's like, oh, whey protein isolate or whey protein concentrate. So each one. So if I went whey protein concentrate and then isolate all the way down, that isolate is going to be digested and moved through your stomach faster as you go down.
But like a casein is going to like take longer. So a lot of people do that like before bed if they need to get their intake because it's slower releasing.
Okay.
So it's just
a
two
long
different
time
things.
to get out of your stomach. I've heard that it kind of like it's something to do with the acid in your stomach and how it kind of gels up. So it takes a long time to actually spit out of the stomach and be used. That's why it's considered slower releasing.
Last question and our favorite one, or my favorite one of the day, and we'll all pitch in here. For people that have a sweet tooth, they're sweet treat eaters. You know, they say they eat nutrient dense food, right, most of the time, but they still this is true. Some people just crave sweets.
Yeah.
So for individuals that crave sweet things, are there any protein snacks that you guys would recommend or that you've done before?
So I like to get like a vanilla protein and something that has a nice sweet taste to it. I think most recently it was like Isoflave ice cream, vanilla ice cream. And that's the one, that's the brand, the flavor. It's got a really good sweet taste to it. And just adding that into certain things, very low barrier is some oatmeal that I can get the taste kind of sweet with just adding the protein to it, just like I normally would. My wife makes these like protein cake balls.
Oh, they're great.
And they're delicious.
One thing I like is like a pudding consistency. I used to do like a Greek yogurt, just a plain Greek yogurt. And then I'm a chocolate protein person, so I would put the chocolate protein powder in there. I would put like 1 pack of like a stevia or something, mix it all in, set it in the freezer for like 5 to 6 minutes. Take it out, whip it up. It's like a cold pudding, but it has a little bit thicker consistency. So it tastes a little bit more like an ice cream would or something like that. And if you have room for carbs, like slice a banana, put it in there. It's freaking, it hits the spot every time. And then you don't feel bad about it.
I've done that banana ice cream where you like freeze bananas, put it in the blender, then I add protein powder to that and like some chocolate chips and like cocoa powder or whatever else. It's good. I mean, it's not ice cream, but it's good.
I mean, you can't, and that's the thing. Like, you can't go into it thinking like this is gonna taste like a banana split,
right?
But it's gonna do the trick to like, get your sweet tooth out of here, kind of thing. And I think the protein balls are great, like peanut butter with protein.
I've done that, almost like a no-bake type of.
Put it in the freezer.
Yeah. I mean, those are ways to get around that.
I like those Lenny and Larry cookies.
Oh my gosh.
Those are pretty good.
Love
if you
those.
just want a cookie, I also like
It's a good gas station find.
Yeah.
Like a Cliff Builders bar, the mint chocolate chip one. Okay, but like it's better than like we're talking about getting protein. Like whether or not it's like the healthiest choice, it's got 20 grams of protein and it tastes like a candy bar. So like where I would normally reach for, it's like 2 something.
Where 210. It's the Builder. No.
Oh yeah, no, those are.
Well, Lenny and Larry's. Let's just make this very clear. Look at the servings. It's actually the whole cookie is 2 servings. So the little ones. The bigger ones that you get like at the gas station or things like that. It is 2 servings. So when you're reading that label, double it. So just fair warning out there. But those do they curb some.
Like if you're gonna eat a cookie, like I'm not saying either one is healthy, but if you're gonna eat a cookie, if that does it for you, you might as well get some protein in the process.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Yeah.
We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Matt, for coming on today's show and enlightening us with everything in regards to protein. You are a perfect guest for this. Next 2 weeks, guys, we will be talking about carbs, let's learn about it. And then fats, let's learn about it. So we will have guests on for each show to talk about those and learn all about them. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.